2008, and it hit 147.5 in July, August 2008. Also in 2005, in their meeting in Germany, they talked about pushing the gold price from $300 to $1,000, and of course it went up to $1,000 an ounce. In 2006, when they met in Canada, they talked about not so much orchestrating, but the fact that they couldn't prevent the complete and utter meltdown of the housing market in the United States and in many different countries in Europe, and amongst them Spain. And as we saw, this is exactly what happened. And going back to the 1990s, in 1996, the war in Kosovo was discussed, and of course that took place 3 years later. And in 1992, for the first time when they met in Evian in France, they talked about the need for creating the United Nations Army. And 14 years later, aside from the fact that we already have a rapid reaction force in Europe, which is your de facto European army, 14 years later, that is in 2006, when they met in Canada on the outskirts of Ottawa, suddenly the United Nations Army became the key issue, not only for the Canadian politicians, but also in the mainstream Canadian press.
Na koji način grupa Bilderberg provodi svoje odluke prema bazi, znači prema dolje, prema političarima u zemljama koje nemaju svog Bilderberga, da tako kažem, ili u drugim institucijama? Naravno nisu svi uključeni u Bilderberge, pa ipak treba obaviti neki posao za njih.
Well, that's a very good question, and unfortunately, not too many people ask me this question. One of the reasons, excuse me, one of the reasons people have a hard time believing in secret societies controlling the world is that there's a Cartesian fantasy world system where they literally believe that one person, a very small group of people, control the world, instead of understanding it as a dynamic social processes against, the historical, especially when you put it in historical context of social political events over the past 1,000 years. So no, there's no one bad guy who tells everybody else what to do. Yes, it's a socio-historical concept. But what's interesting about these people is that there's no one who's leading the group. You have a president, who is in this case right now Etienne Davignon, but he's not the decision maker. But for example, in January you have Davos Economic Forum. In February, March, the Council of Foreign Relations, they have their annual meeting. Then in April, the Trilateral Commission, they have their annual meeting. In May, June, Bilderbergers meet. In September, International Monetary Fund of the World Bank, they have their annual meeting. In October, Trilateral Commission Asia have their regional meeting. In November, Trilateral Commission Europe, they meet. And in December, Trilateral Commission Americas, they have their regional meeting. But there's nobody leading these discussions. But the decisions reached in one get passed on to the other, and before you know it, they become the key points in regional elections, then national elections, then international elections. Then becomes a key issue to be discussed in European Parliament and the United Nations. And before you know it, every mass media publication is saying, now what are we going to do to stop genocide in Yugoslavia? What are we going to do about all these, poor people being killed in Afghanistan? We have to bring democracy to Afghanistan. And that's really how it works. As an example, I just gave you, in 1992, they met and discussed for the first time the issue of the United Nations Army in Evian in France. And then in 1995, taking advantage of the war in ex-Yugoslavia, it became a key issue in national elections in Spain, where suddenly, the mainstream Spanish press, led by El País, which is a Bilderberger publication, was saying that, there's a need to create a force that could fight, the bad Serbs so that they wouldn't kill the good people of, all these other former Yugoslav provinces. And then in 1996, it became again an issue in the European elections. In 1998, just when the war was getting underway in 1998-99 in Kosovo, again it became an issue in elections in France, in England, in Holland, in Denmark, and in Sweden. And then in 2001, BBC, which is the main Bilderberger organ in the world, it had a very important article where they're literally talking about the need to create the rapid reaction force and saying just how necessary that is for the stability of Europe. And then, as I said again, in 2006, Bilderbergers met in Ottawa. And 2 days after the meeting ended, it was on the front page of every Canadian publication controlled, which is obviously mainstream publications controlled by Bilderbergers, where it wasn't Bilderberg, but actually United Nations, according to the publications, who came up with the idea of the need to create the United Nations Army. And again, they take their time, but they certainly understand that it's a long process, especially, again, if you put it in historical context and not just look at it as a conspiracy of Cartesian one-person conspiracy.
Može li se reći da je Europska unija projekt Bilderberga?
Well, of course, as a matter of fact, not only can we say it, but they themselves have admitted it, so that's no longer in question. They released Etienne Davignon, the president of the Bilderbergers, talked a few months ago about the fact that, yes, the idea for the European Union was first, second, and mostly discussed at Bilderberg conference, and he was very proud of the fact that Bilderberg organization worked together to create what he believes to be such an important group or pan-European Union for world's peace.
S obzirom na sve što se od vas može čuti od Bilderbergima, teško je zamisliti da su Europsku uniju zamislili kao demokratski raj, kako se predstavlja često puta u medijima, kao nešto bolje od onog što zemlje koje još nisu ušle imaju. Što oni zapravo žele postići Europskom unijom? Kakva je njena struktura? Može li se govoriti o nekakvoj vrsti prikrivene diktature ili čak otvorene, kao što neki tvrde?
Well, you just hit right on the right word. Any kind of globalization is an empire, and any kind of an empire is a dictatorship. And theirs is an empire of money. And in the end, their plan hasn't changed at all over the past 1,000 years. What's today called the Bilderberg Group or the Bilderberg Organization or Society, 800 years ago was called the Venetian Black Nobility. And in fact, if you look historically, these are the same families over this very long span of time, and that's why I do mean historically. You can really see how the same families have been working towards the goal of control, and we're seeing it right now. European Union, you have the North American Union being created. African Union is already, ahead of North American Union in their plans. And now you have the Asians gathering together under one roof as well. And again, the plan hasn't changed in all these years or centuries. It is the wholesale destruction of nation-state republics. And that is very important because, you see, nation-states, independent nation-states, have constitutions, flags, currencies, borders, their own monetary systems. And right now, what we have in Europe is we have this pan-European Union where nations are no longer allowed to feed their own citizens. They don't have their own monetary policy. It's controlled by the same people whose idea to destroy every nation-state on earth. And obviously, my advice to Croatia is, please, whatever you do, think twice before you decide becoming third-rate citizens in this global dictatorship.
Kada se priča o uništenju nacionalnih država, što je danas stvarnost s obzirom da se želi stvoriti jedna nadnacionalna država iz svega što se vidi, kako se taj koncept uklapa u vrijeme od prije 700, 800 ili 600 godina? Kada još nije ni bilo pravih nacionalnih država. Zbog čega ih je prvo trebalo stvarati da bi ih se potom uništavalo?
Well, what we're doing right now, I'm not sure if you're referring to former Yugoslavia, or you're referring to
ja govorim o jednom srednjovjekovnom svijetu, puno malih kraljevina, bez pravih nacija, kad ljudi čak i nisu svjesni svog nacionalnog identiteta, a države su tek kraljevine, tek će nastati od njih nacionalne države.
You see, the idea, the whole concept of nation-state republics was born as a result of a meeting, a council, which was held in 1439, 1440, which was called then the Council of Florence. And this Council of Florence was the temporary merger of the Eastern and Western rites of the Christian Church. And it was led by brilliant people such as future Pope Pio II and to me, the most brilliant person in the history of the last 600 years, Cardinal Nicholas of Cusa. And as a result of that Council of Florence, first nation state republic was born in Europe and France with Louis XI, and then in England